Elizabeth, thank you for stepping up and sharing with us and leading in prayer this morning. We ask a lot of our staff to do different things, and it's good for you to see who the staff are here at the church, especially if you're new, so you know who you can connect with when you're here with us. Well, friends, last week we kicked into this sermon series, kind of laying a foundation for where these next 8 weeks are going to take us, and talking about my biggest battle. And the very first foundational statement we made, and something that was a real simple statement, we just said that, every battle that you face is in the Bible, it's in the book. I believe that to be a solid truth, and so much so that I'm going to ask you to just say that with me. If you remember from last week, we just said, my battle's in the book. Would you say that with me? My battle is in the book. And I'm so glad to realize that, because it reminds me that my battle is not new to God. I didn't just surprise God by the battle I laid on his throne, on his altar. God has seen my battle before. God has seen your battle before. He's dealt with your battle before. He's defeated your battle before. And he's ready and he's equipped and he's wanting to deal with it and defeat it again for you. So hopefully that's a great stepping off point, just knowing that the battle you're facing is in the book. God knows how to deal with what you're dealing with. And what we're going to be doing, for the next 8 weeks, including this week, is charging into different battles. We're going to be talking things like today is fear, but then judging others, depression, forgiveness, anger, anxiety and worry, pride, discipline. Those are all the battles. You can read those on the posters. You'll see them strewn around the building. But hopefully you look at those and you say, oh, here's one on this subject. Man, my husband so much needs to hear that, right? Or I know my brother would really be blessed if he could just come and hear that sermon. So we've listed those for you. They're on posters. If you need to take the poster home with you, you can take it off the wall. We'll print more if you feel free. But hopefully that's a good way to let you know what we're going to be talking about as we go through these battles. But to introduce this morning's battle, let's take a look at the screen for the next minute and a half.
May I help you? I am in sad shape. Wait a minute. Before you begin, I must ask that you pay in advance. 5 cents, please. Boy, what a sound! How I love to hear that old money clink. That beautiful sound of cold, hard cash. That beautiful, beautiful sound. Nickels, nickels, nickels. That beautiful sound of plinking nickels. All right now. What seems to be your trouble? I feel depressed. I know I should be happy, but I'm not. Well, as they say on TV, the mere fact that you realize you need help indicates that you are not too far gone. I think we better pinpoint your fears. If we can find out what you're afraid of, we can label it. Are you afraid of responsibility? If you are, then you have hypengiophobia. I don't think that's quite it. How about cats? If you're afraid of cats, you have ailurophasia. Well, sort of, but I'm not sure. Are you afraid of staircases? If you are, then you have chlamydophobia. Maybe you have thalassophobia. This is fear of the ocean. Or chephorobia, which is the fear of crossing bridges. Or maybe you have pantophobia. Do you think you have pantophobia? What's pantophobia? The fear of everything. That's it!
Poor Charlie Brown. I don't know. I'm going to bring you down just a little bit, Jack, thanks. I don't know anyone who suffers from pantophobia, the fear of everything. I think maybe Charlie Brown's only rival would be Monk, if you're familiar with Monk. But I do believe that every single one of us battles fear. Fear just has a way of getting into every crack and crevice of our lives. And so we're going to be talking about fear today. In fact, fear is one of the most popular battles, if I should say it that way, that you returned on the surveys. Things like fear of failure, fear of my past, fear my past will come up and catch up with me and haunt my future, fear that I can't change, fear that I will never be forgiven, fear just of the future, and the list went on. And so we have a lot of people battling with a lot of fear of a lot of different things. And so I think this is one of those categories that kind of covers every single one of us. And some of those that I've just mentioned are going to be fleshed out more in other sermons. But fear is just one of those battles. Fear has its way of getting its icy fingers into every sort of battle that we face. So today we're going to talk about fear, because so many of us live in fear of something. And why wouldn't we, right? Your boss tells you that positions are being cut at your work. or your doctor tells you that more tests need to be run, or your spouse tells you that you need to talk, that things need to change, or your daughter comes and tells you that she hurts in a certain physical spot, that's not normal. Those all incite fear. You turn on the news and you find out that the housing market is shrinking down, and by the way, so are the polar ice caps. And is it any wonder, Max Lucado writes, is it any wonder that terrorism begins with the word terror? Again, fear. And drive around and around town and around neighborhoods and just note how ADT and Brink's security systems, they're making a killing in neighborhoods that you really think should be safe. Fear. We're living in fear. It's like fear has moved in and set down its roots, and it says, I intend to live with you for a long, long time. And for some of you, it really has. So can you imagine your life without fear? Can you imagine that? I mean, what would you be free to do? And where would you be free to go? And who would you be free to be? And what would you dare to risk? Can you imagine your life without fear? God can. God can imagine your life without fear. God designed you to live your life without fear. Now, I'm not saying you're going to turn into some superhero that's invulnerable and impervious to things that really can hurt you. Okay, that's not what we're going for here. I'm just saying that in every single book of the Bible, did you know this? Every single book of the Bible, God says, don't fear. Don't be afraid. Every book of the Bible, God is saying that over and over again. So it's obvious that God really has a genuine interest in your fear. I say this morning, let's let Him talk about that to us. Before we do, let's make sure we're ready to listen. Let's pray. So, Father, we find ourselves at this really neat place where we're recognizing and confessing that we do fear, but we want to hear from you, Lord. Is that how you made us? And is that how we're supposed to stay? Do you have any reason, God, why we shouldn't fear? So, Lord, we're going to open up your word today, and we're going to let you speak and let you teach and let you be the one that casts out truth for us. Because, Lord, the reality is the world around us tells us to be afraid of a lot of stuff. But that's not the voice we want to listen to. We want to hear your voice on this matter. So, Jesus, have your way. Speak, Lord, and find us to be faithful listeners today. Jesus, we give you permission to come by the power of your Holy Spirit and to do everything that you want and we need you to do. Jesus, again, we pray this in your holy name. Amen. So let's start by asking this question, and I'm going to ask it to you seriously. Why? Why do we fear? There's no right or wrong answers. What do you think? Why do we fear? You can shout out any answer you have if you feel free. Uncertainty. Yeah, that makes us scared, right? Uncertainty. Say it again. Because we doubt God at times. That's exactly right. It makes us fearful. Why else? Well, say it again. I heard someone start. Ignorance, yeah. Sometimes we don't understand that things are happening to us, and that causes us fear. I think if we take all these answers, and the ones you're thinking of but we're too scared to say, if we take all those answers and you wrap them up into one reason of why we fear, I think we fear because we face things that we can't control, that are dangerous, but we can't handle them. There are things that are beyond us. They're beyond our capability to handle, and we know they may be harmful to us. You know, whatever that is physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, relational, whatever it is, and that causes us to fear. You ever been in a situation where it was potentially harmful to you and you had no control over it? You ever been in a situation like that? Yeah. Like, for instance, you ever been lost? I mean, really lost? And if it was up to you, you would still be lost today? Like somewhere? I remember when we used to live in Georgia, we lived down on the coast, the southern coast of Georgia. And my two best friends in the world, they still are, Dan and Steve, we were hunting partners, and we used to go to this one area to hunt. It was up near Darien, Georgia, right along the coast. It's south of Savannah, north of Brunswick and St. Simon's Island. It's just about 10 miles north of Brunswick. Darien, I'll tell you about Darien. That's a place, if you want to eat fresh seafood, it's like you sit down in the restaurants there, and they say, catch of the day is, and they point out the window and they show you what's coming off the boat right then. That's like catch of the hour, and that's what you're ordering. It's just that great of a place. I'm hungry, apparently, to eat seafood. But just inland from Darien is a wildlife management area that we used to hunt, and it encompasses thousands of acres. It is very, very primitive. Nothing's ever been really done to it. And it's riddled with swamps, broken up by these kind of high ground, hardwood ridges. And so every critter you can think of lives in that hunting area on these thousands of acres. And to make it worse and more wild, you can't drive to it. You drive towards it, then you have to park, and there's a right-of-way of about a mile or two. You either had to hike or oftentimes we would mountain biking with all of our gear, and that just gave you access to the beginning of the property. Then you just go, again, thousands of acres. And so three of us were out there hunting one day, and we stayed until dark 30, and we're walking back, and it's a long trek back out, and so it's well past the dark hour, and we're walking out on one of those little sandy ridges where there actually was a service road prepared for. And all of a sudden, our conversation was broken by this strange guy's voice hollering to us saying, hey, y'all stop, wait. And we looked over to our right through this hardwood swamp as far as you could see, in the dark. We could see through there, and there was a light, and then there was a sound of splashing as this guy started high-stepping it towards us. And when he got to us, his eyes were like this. He looked like he'd been living in the dark for most of his life, and he probably felt like he had. But when he got to us, I'm telling you, he was the most exuberant. He was the happiest guy I'd ever seen in my life because he'd been out hunting and gotten turned around, been wandering around for hours in the dark, in the swamp that was like almost endless, and where every critter again you can think of lived. And when he heard our voices and hollered out and knew that we were real, he was so super excited, and we got him back, on that little crossroad, and he got his bearings. And to this day, I don't know. I think he got home. This is like 20 years ago. I think we helped him find his way not only out of his fear, but hopefully to his house. But we fear when we realize that there's something, that's like bigger than us, like thousands of acres of unknown to us, and we're lost in it. Because we don't understand it, or it seems inevitable, or we don't have what it takes to get out of that swamp, and we can't handle it. By the way, do you know what the first mention of fear is in the Bible? It's way back in Genesis chapter 3. It's when, let me ask you, remember when God created Adam and Eve? Do you remember that? Okay, I can go back and review that if we need to. Do you remember when God created Adam and Eve? Yeah, God created Adam and Eve, and it was like perfect, right? God would come down, hey, you want to go for a walk in the garden? Yeah. Let's hold God's hand. And they would go for walks in the garden, and they would talk together and visit together. It was just this fantastic, perfect relationship, and life was perfect in the garden until Satan, the enemy, took the form of a serpent. He was conniving and sneaky, and he convinced Adam and Eve to eat the forbidden fruit. And as soon as they did, God came walking back in the garden. And for the first time in creation, Adam and Eve didn't come bounding up to God, like puppies around a person and say, hey, let's walk together. For the first time, God stood there and looked around, and they weren't there. And so God said, hey, where are y'all? Because he was Southern. Hey, where are y'all? And Adam said, we're hiding. Why are you hiding? God said. And listen to Adam's answer. Genesis 3, verse 10. Adam said, I heard you in the garden, and I was what? Afraid. That's the first mention of fear in Scripture. Now, why would they be afraid? Why would they be hiding? Because for the first time, they had broken relationship with God. For the first time, they'd broken trust with a Father who loved them and created them. For the first time. And because we all inherited that broken relationship with God, it's called the fall, the original sin. Because we all inherited that broken relationship with God, fear became a fixture in the life of mankind. See, you weren't made to fear. That's not how God created you. You inherited fear. Fear is a result of the fall. It's of the enemy, not of God. And so immediately, God set about in motion a plan to fix everything that the fall had destroyed, including fear. So God has given you a battle plan for your fear. And you remember from last week, what's God's battle plan for every battle you face? Thank you for remembering, all two of you. It makes me feel so good about last week's sermon. Seriously, God's battle plan for every fear you face is Jesus, even for what you fear. Let's look at how he works. There was a night when the 12 apostles were absolutely terrified. I don't know what these guys looked like, but in reading their stories and all, I imagine the 12 apostles as being, full-grown, big, strong, burly, manly men. But in this event, the 12 apostles screamed like 12-year-old girls. And I want to just kind of set this scene for you. It started, and I would have too at this situation, but it all started one day when Jesus and his 12 needed to get away. They've been just serving the masses of people, day in, day out, week in, week out, and they're tired. And Jesus said, I'm looking at y'all, and you look ragged, and so you need a break. And so let's just get away from the crowd. Let's get in our boat, and let's go to the other side of the lake. And so they intended to take this little Jesus and 12 retreat. But when the people heard out about it, the plan backfired because they ran around the lake to get to the other side. And so when Jesus stepped off the boat, there are thousands of people who were waiting for Jesus. And in true Jesus fashion, Jesus had compassion on them, and he began to minister to them, to heal their sick and to bless them and preach and teach to them and sit with them. And when evening drew near, they're like, we're hungry. And there wasn't a McDonald's or a Chipotle around. And so Jesus said, what do we got to feed these people? And they had a little boy's lunch. Remember that? They had 5 little round, hard barley loaves and 2 little dried salted fish. It was enough for one boy for one meal. And Jesus had thousands of people. But Jesus, he's in the business of miracles. So Jesus broke the bread and the fish, and he fed. The number was 5,000 men plus women and children. It could have been 10,000 people with this little meal. And Jesus does this miracle. And once they all had enough to eat, the 12 apostles collected all that was left over. Leftovers were not just in your house; they were when Jesus lived too. And they had 12 baskets of leftovers, which is really cool because how many apostles were there? Oh, they each got a basket for themselves, almost like Jesus planned it that way. Interesting. So they does this miracle, and they eat, and then Jesus said, hey, okay, it's time for y'all now to go home. And so the people dispersed. All these thousands went to wherever they needed to go. And he said to the 12, y'all get in a boat, because we're going to go to another spot across another part of the lake. And they got in their boat, and they started rowing, and they didn't know what Jesus was up to, but he was staying there to go up on the mountainside to pray. And he prayed all night long. And in the final watch of the night, just before dawn, it says he looked out over the lake and he could see them struggling against the wind and the waves. That was the Sea of Galilee. It was known for its tempests and the storms. And they were struggling. They were straining at the oars. And so it says just before dawn, Jesus decided to do something. And so here are these men in the boat, and they're rowing for all their worth, and they're trying to get their way across the lake. But the reality is they're not making really good progress. Now, some of the men in the boat were experienced sailors. They're professional fishermen. And although it's hard, they're not really afraid of the waves. They're okay with that. But what freaked them out was this. If you've got your Bibles, way to go. Matthew chapter 14. We're going to settle down in verses 25 through 33 today. Matthew 14, verses 25 through 33. Listen to how Matthew writes this. And remember, Matthew was in the boat. This is eyewitness, ear witness, firsthand account. Matthew wrote this from memory. Verse 25, amen. Verse 25, shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, and don't miss the word immediately. Did you catch that? The moment they are fearful, the moment they express, hey, we've got this fear, in whatever way they express it, immediately Jesus acts. There's no hesitation with Jesus. I want you to know that, because when you're facing fear, the moment you say, God, I need you, immediately God moves into action. Immediately, Jesus said to them, take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. Did you ever stop and think about that request for a moment? Who made that request? What does Peter's name mean in Greek? You ever see a rock float? Okay, I'm just saying, I'm trying to build this up a little bit. Here's Peter, the rock, making this request. Hey, Jesus, if it really is you, then tell me to come to you to where you are. What a bold request. Because Jesus is doing something that only God can do. Jesus is walking somewhere where only God can walk. Jesus is walking and living outside of the parameters of normal or any human capability or experience. And Peter just invites himself in. Hey, Jesus, what you're doing is like miraculous. Can I come and do it too? Right? And maybe the only thing more astonishing than Peter's request is Jesus' response. Come, Jesus said. Really? Come. Join me in the miraculous, Peter. Come. Yes. Do what you would never be able to do on your own. Come, Peter, even though you're afraid of what you're about to step into, walk on the water. Come to where I am. Yes, Peter, do it. Then Peter got out of the boat, walked in the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. What's that next word? Immediately. Yeah, there it is again. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You have little faith, he said. Why did you doubt? Now, I want to stop there again for a second. I don't think Jesus was reproving Peter. I know some pastors read into that, and Jesus was harsh and angry. You know, you should know better by now. I don't think he was reproving Peter. I think he was just sad. I think he was just sad that Peter didn't have enough faith, that Peter kind of petered out. You know, I think that's probably where we get the phrase, I don't know, I'm just guessing. But Jesus asked, why did you peter out? Peter, why did you not make it? And I'm going to be honest. Listen, if it was me, if I was Peter, I probably would have opened my big mouth and I would have said something like, I don't know, Jesus. Maybe it's because, I don't know, the wind is whipping and the waves are churning and I'm in the middle of a storm, and maybe it's the sheer audacity of what I'm attempting to do. I'm walking on water. Do you see what I'm doing, Jesus? I'm walking on water here. It's kind of new for me. Maybe you're used to it. I'm not. I'm a bit scared by this, right? Why did you doubt? Are you kidding me? What was I thinking? And I can imagine if I would have said that to Jesus, what Jesus would have said back to me was, I think that you were thinking you were with me. And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. So what enabled Peter to clamber over the side of a boat? I mean, he was a professional fisherman. He's one of the ones who knew those waters. That was his home turf, right? Well, home sea. Yeah, home turf's a bad term there. That was his home water. That was his front yard. That's where his business was for years. He was a professional fisherman. He knew the danger of these waters. Have you ever been in dangerous waters, by the way? In a small boat? In jeopardy of capsizing? Let me take you back to Georgia for a minute. Yeah, another rich story. One of the same friends from the swamp story, Dan, was with me, and another mutual friend of ours, Emery. We were out in Emery's boat, and we decided to go flounder gigging. You ever go flounder gigging? It is a cross between hunting and fishing. It's like fishing in water. It's super cool. Ask me about it later. I'll tell you hours of stories. But we decided to go flounder gigging on an island that was off the coast. There was boat access only. And so we get all of our gear and we go out in the early evening because you flounder gig, you gig all night. And so we wanted to get over there in daylight. You come in the far side, ocean side of the island. It's called Christmas Creek. And we got over there. We had to cross the Jekyll Sound, and it was pretty cool going across that. And we get to the far side of the island, and we come in, and we dock the boat. We gig along. Kid you not, I was walking along, and you walk along in various depths of water, and a shark swam right by my leg. It wasn't fun at that point. But we flounder gigged all night, and then we got a couple hours of sleep, and at dawn we started heading back to the mainland. And as we're going back across the Jekyll Sound, it was very different from the day before. The day before was pretty smooth and pretty calm, and we were laughing as we went across. This time, it was rough. And our boat, although nice, wasn't very big, and we were slapping around from wave to wave in the water. And I'll tell you what, I was pretty scared. I was the newbie on the trip, and I was pretty terrified, screaming pretty much like a little girl inside. But Dan and Emery were not. Dan is currently the chief director of wildlife for the entire state of Georgia, and Emery is an ophthalmologist. I've never seen either of those men rattled at anything, but I looked at their faces and I saw fear. And I thought, this probably is Code Brown right now. And I was that scared. And I thought, this may not be good. I didn't open my mouth. They manned the instruments, and we got back to where we needed to be. We docked a boat finally at Two-Way Marina. After we docked a boat and got on dry ground, and I sat down, I said to them, I looked at y'all when we were crossing the Sound. Why were you so scared? And they looked at me, and they then explained to me that they said the water we were over at that point is one of the deepest holes along this coast. It's a 50-foot hole, and it is the largest hammerhead shark breeding ground along the whole eastern coast. Third largest in the world. You don't want to capsize there. Thank you for not telling me that when we were on that water, because I didn't have an extra change of pants. It would have been all over. Peter knew the waters they were on. He knew that staying in the boat was safe, even as rough as it was. What made him get out of the boat to get in the water where he would be scared? He didn't hide from his fear. Christian, you said there were 11 others in the boat. Why one? Why would he climb over and do more than dangle his feet at the top of the waves? I'll tell you what it was. What pushed him through his fear is the same thing that pushes you through your fear. What on earth allowed Peter to do that was God on earth. It was his trust in Jesus Christ. Peter trusted Jesus. He'd seen him do too much not to. All the others in the boat had spiritual amnesia. It's like they forgot everything they'd seen Jesus do up to that point. But not Peter. It was on that very same lake that the master teacher taught the master fisherman how to cast his nets to catch fish. It was around that very lake. I imagine Peter's like flashing, I don't know, my life would have been flashing through my mind. I think he's flashing episodes of Jesus through his mind. It was around that very lake that Peter watched Jesus give sight to the blind and help the deaf to hear. And when he saw the lame hobble or be carried to Jesus, he watched them go dancing away on their own two legs. He'd seen Jesus do too much of the miraculous not to trust him. And so now, when he's literally there facing the spray of his fear, he looks through the wind and he looks across the waves and he sees an unstirred Jesus who says, "It's okay. Come." And he trusts him. Jesus stands just as sure and unstirred in the fears that you face. Let me say that again so you hear that. Jesus stands just as sure and unstirred in the fears that you face. Did you know, by the way, that Jesus isn't afraid of what you're afraid of? Isn't that cool? The things that make you fear, Jesus doesn't fear. And more than that, he is the authority over them. Yeah, but you know what, Rich? Commanding me to to not be afraid doesn't really work with me. It's like, when my kids are sick, and I've wanted to do this, but I really haven't. Hey, stop being sick. Does that work? Okay, none of you are parents who ever had sick kids. Does commanding your child to get well make them well? No, it's ridiculous, right? Hey, Jesus standing there and saying, don't be afraid, doesn't really make me not afraid. But what if? What if God's words, do not fear, weren't so much a command as an invitation? What if Jesus is saying, you don't have to be afraid. Let me help you not to be. I mean, that's what you do with your kids when they're sick, right? You don't say, don't be sick. You say, hey, I know that you're sick. I'm inviting you to let me help you get well. And then you walk with your child through getting well. What if God's words, don't be afraid, aren't a command? What if they're an invitation? What would that mean to you? What would that do to your fears? What if you could really trust that when Jesus says, come, he means it? That he's going to be standing right there in the midst of your wind and of your waves. What if it's an invitation to trust him to be your strength when you're weak, to be your portion when you're poured out, to be your wisdom when your wisdom has failed you? What if? What if it's an invitation? God saying to you, hey, let me show you how not to be afraid. Why you don't have to be afraid, because I'm the authority over what you're afraid of. That's all well and good. But what happens when you leave here? I mean, it sounds good right now, right? Hey, this morning, God is here. We sang about it. He's with us right now. We believe that. And yeah, rah, rah, God's telling me I don't have to be afraid. But what about when I walk out these doors? And all of a sudden, the wind starts whipping. And the waves start churning. I mean, is there a way, practically speaking, is there a way to stay in connection with this God who says, I'm with you in the fear? I'm with you in the... Is there a way to do that? Yeah. What would it look like? I don't know. Maybe something called memory verse. Maybe one from, Psalm 33, verses 20 and 21. To take a shot in the dark. Remember what it says? Read it with me. Psalm 33, 20 through 21. We wait in the hope of the Lord. He is our what? Help. And our what? Shield. In him our hearts rejoice, for we what? Trust in his holy name. You commit that to memory, I can guarantee you, when you're standing there in the wind and the waves of your fear, and you just close your eyes for a moment, and you recall that passage, and the enemy who's using fear to jab you and prod you and get to you is doing his best to get you, you say, wait a minute, I remember this passage. It's from Psalm 33, verses 20 and 21. I wait in the hope of the Lord. He is my help, and he's my shield. In him my heart rejoices, because I do trust in his holy name. I guarantee you, when you commit passages like that one to memory, and you begin to use them against the enemy, you know what he does? He runs like a scalded dog, because he cannot stand against the truth of our God. That is a practical way to help you stay connected to the one who is the authority over your fears. Jesus is God's battle plan for your fear. As much as broken relationship with God is what got us into fear in the first place, restoring that trusted relationship is what remedies your fear and overcomes your fear. And that is done by spending time with him, memorizing his word, spending time in prayer with him. Listen, if you're not spending quality time with God on a regular, and I mean daily or even hourly basis, have fun with your fear. I don't mean to be trite, but man, it's like going to a gunfight without anything. But God gives you the greatest weapon of all, himself, to stand with you in the midst of the waves and the wind. And if you will take time intentionally to let that relationship be mended between you and him, and for your trust to grow in him, you're going to find that He will battle your fear for you. He is the one who stands in the midst with you, His presence with you in every fear. I'm going to invite our praise team, Dwayne and team, to come on back up. They're going to get ready to bring us some special music in just a moment. But let me just say this. When the world and the enemy are telling you that you can't, you just stay in your boat, don't step out over the edge, don't step off of the shore, stay where you are, don't risk it, it's scary, you ought to be scared of this. When the world tells you you can't, God tells you you can. When the world tells you to fear, God tells you you can learn to live fearless. This morning, as the team brings us this special music, we're not going to sing it. We're going to stay seated. I just want you to soak in it. But as they sing about this voice of truth, I want you to know that you're welcome to come up to this altar. This morning, if you're battling some fear, or you just know that things are really pressing in on you right now, the wind and the waves are churning and blowing, then this is a place where you begin to make that relationship right. And maybe you're walking really tight with God right now, but you're still sensing some fear about some things. This is a place to come and just get your eyes refocused on Him. I want you to know this altar is wide open. And if you want someone to pray with you, listen, you just let me know. I'll be right with you. Jay, I'm going to count on you being present. Elizabeth, you'll be present. We're here for you. If you want us to pray with you or just come by your side and just know that there's another believer shoulder to shoulder with you, because we're people who fear too. We'll be by you. But if you just want some time alone with God, then that's great too. We'll let you have your time. But while this song is being sung, and any time between now and the rest of this service, this altar is open. Would you make use of it? Let me pray us into this time, if I may. Father God, as we're about to hear this song, I pray that we are not simply hearers and spectators, but we could become active participants in the truth that it yields. And I pray, Jesus, that today, that beautiful Psalm 33, 20 and 21 would become reality for some people, or maybe for all of us in this room. And Jesus, if it needs to begin right here with us on our knees, as if we're sitting in the boat, maybe, Lord, today the seats are the boat. And this little bit of space between my row and the altar is an open sea. But Jesus, I believe this is where you meet us. And it takes some courage to leave the other 11 and to step out and to sink down right here. Jesus, you won't disappoint us. You'll reach to right where we are. And I pray that anybody who fears that would have that fear dispelled today. That as they come to meet you, you are ever present and ever ready and ever powerful. And we would see miracles begin to happen today. The bondages of fear would be broken, and new life would be received. To risk and to dare, to leap and to sing, and to be about what we've never been able to be about before. So Christ, make this to be a holy time, for this indeed is holy ground. We pray this, Jesus, in your holy name.